Before we get started, make sure to subscribe to the channel and like this video. That way, you'll always stay connected to our stories and never miss the next adventure. Look, when the Galactic community finds a monument that says, "No hope remains" in every known language, and I mean every language, including 3 that haven't been spoken since their speakers went mysteriously, catastrophically extinct, the standard protocol is simple. Mark it, quarantine it, and for the love of entropy, don't touch it. Reasonable, right? Well, humanity didn't get a seat at the galactic table by being reasonable. The Obelisk of Final Warning sat on Narthex 3 like a tombstone for ambition itself. Narthex 3, for those keeping score at home, was what optimists called a formerly viable world, and what everyone else called a cosmic crime scene. The planet's atmosphere had checked out around the same time its entire biosphere decided to stop participating in existence. No war, no asteroid, no dramatic stellar event. Just one day everything was fine, and the next day, silence. The only thing left standing was the obelisk, 30 meters tall, made of a material that laughed at every scan humanity could throw at it, and covered, absolutely plastered, with text. The same message, over and over, in concentric rings that spiraled from base to peak. No hope remains. In Chitaran click script. In Felorian thermal patterns. In human English, Chinese, Swahili, and apparently ancient Sumerian, which raised some uncomfortable questions about how old this thing really was. Even in languages nobody had ever seen before, but the translation matrices all agreed. No hope remains. Super encouraging stuff. 8 advanced civilizations had encountered similar obelisks throughout recorded history. 8 civilizations that, after finding these cheerful little monuments, had gone extinct within a generation. Sometimes faster. The crystalline concordate tried to decode one. Took them 3 months of intense study before their entire species just stopped. No distress signals, no warnings, just a billion crystal entities going inert simultaneously. The methane breathers of Io Secundus took a more direct approach. They tried to destroy their obelisk, threw everything they had at it. Kinetic strikes, antimatter, even a weaponized black hole, because apparently some species have more firepower than sense. The obelisk didn't even get scratched. Their homeworld, however, went silent 6 days later. So yes, when humanity's turn came to investigate one of these things, the galaxy was watching very, very carefully. Enter Captain Theo, who treated ancient doom prophecies with roughly the same level of concern most people reserved for "caution, wet floor" signs. Theo stood in the observation bay of the Curiosity Killed Nothing Yet. Yes, that was the actual name of the ship. No, the naming committee hadn't been sober, and stared at the obelisk through the viewport. He was tall, lean, with the kind of perpetually amused expression that made senior officers nervous and alien diplomats reach for their anxiety medication. "It's beautiful," he said, which was technically true if you found existential dread aesthetically pleasing. "It's terrifying," Lieutenant Ava countered. She stood beside him, arms crossed, tactical implant glowing faintly at her temple as she ran threat assessments that kept coming back with results like "run" and "seriously, run." Ava had short, dark hair, sharp features, and the kind of dark humor that came from spending too much time in military intelligence. "Every scan we run just confirms what we already know. We shouldn't be here." "And yet, here we are," Theo said cheerfully. "Living dangerously." "Living stupidly," Rook chimed in from the engineering console. Chief Engineer Rook was built like someone who won arguments with machinery through sheer intimidation. Broad-shouldered, permanently grease-stained, with a beard that had probably achieved sentience years ago, but was too polite to mention it. He'd once fixed a failing fusion reactor using duct tape, a prayer to Newton, and what he later described as aggressive optimism. The galaxy has protocols for ominous monuments, Captain. Step 1, look at them. Step 2, leave. There is no Step 3. Step 3 is where it gets interesting, Theo said. Step 3 is where species go extinct, Ava muttered. The bridge doors hissed open, and Ambassador Hreshmalon skittered in on 6 chitinous legs, mandibles clicking in what the translation matrix rendered as profound anxiety. The Chitteran looked like someone had crossed a praying mantis with a nervous breakdown and given it diplomatic credentials. Captain Theo, Hreshmalon's voice buzzed through the translator. The Galactic Council has reviewed your preliminary scans. They have asked me to remind you, again, that observation means looking, not touching, not sampling, and absolutely, under no circumstances, approaching the artifact. We're still in orbit, Theo pointed out. Very responsible of us. You requested an away team authorization. For documentation purposes. The last species that documented an obelisk went extinct before they finished their report. Then they had poor time management skills, Theo said. He turned from the viewport, grinning. Look, Ambassador, I understand the concern. Really, I do. But humanity didn't claw its way out of the Stone Age by leaving mysteries alone. We poked things. We tested things. We asked, what does this button do? And then pressed it before anyone could stop us. Yes, Hreshmalon clicked rapidly. We've read your species' history. It reads like a suicide manual with illustrations. Rook snorted. And yet, here we are, still alive, still curious, still pressing buttons. The Chitteran's antennae drooped in what might have been despair. The Council has prepared quarantine protocols. If you proceed with surface access, and anything goes wrong, this entire system will be locked down. No escape, no rescue, no second chances. Understood, Theo said, which everyone in the room correctly interpreted as, I'm going down there anyway. Ava sighed. I'll prep the shuttle. I'll pack the emergency rations, Rook added, the ones with extra coffee. If we're going to violate the galaxy's #1 safety protocol, I'm doing it caffeinated. 3 hours later, they were on the surface. Narthex III was the kind of dead that made you appreciate being alive. No wind, no sound, just endless gray plains of compacted dust under a sky the color of old bruises. The obelisk rose in the distance like a middle finger to the concept of survival. Atmospheric readings are stable, Ava reported, checking her scanner. Breathable, if you enjoy the taste of disappointment and regret. My favorite flavor, Theo said, leading the way across the wasteland. The closer they got, the more oppressive the obelisk became. It wasn't just the size, though 30 meters of ominous architecture certainly helped. It was the weight of it. The thing radiated wrongness, like reality itself was flinching away from it. The text repeats every 0.6 meters, Rook said, running his engineering scanner along the base. Perfect geometric precision. Whatever built this had technology we still can't fully analyze. And they used it to write, "No hope remains," over and over, Ava added. Real cheerful folks. Theo circled the obelisk slowly, one hand hovering near the surface, but not quite touching. The text seemed to shift in the light. Or maybe it was shifting on its own. Hard to tell with ancient alien monuments that defied physics. There's something about this that doesn't add up, he muttered. You mean, besides the obvious, this is a warning you're ignoring? Ava asked. Think about it, Theo said. stopping at the southeastern face. If you wanted to warn people away from something, would you make it this elaborate? This precise? Every species that sees this understands the message instantly. That takes incredible technology. So why use that technology just to say, go away? Because whatever they're warning us about is worse than extinction, Rook suggested. Maybe. Theo crouched down, studying the base of the obelisk. Or maybe. He went very still. Captain? Ava's hand moved to her sidearm on instinct. There's a seam here, Theo said quietly. Seams happen, Rook said. Thermal expansion, geological. No, Theo interrupted. Not a crack. A seam. Manufactured. Look. He traced his finger along a line so fine it was nearly invisible, running in a perfect rectangle about half a meter wide. Rook crouched beside him, scanner humming. Well, the engineer said after a moment. That's problematic. What is? Ava demanded. It's a panel, Rook said. An access panel. And unless my scanner is having a very specific hallucination, there's a contact point right there. He pointed to a small depression at the panel's center. It was maybe 2 centimeters across, slightly recessed, and absolutely, definitely, unmistakably designed for interaction. AE button. There was a button on the obelisk of final warnings. Oh no, Ava said. No, no, no. I know that look, Captain. That's your I wonder what happens if look. It's an access panel, Theo said, standing up slowly. With a button. And 30 meters of text saying, no hope remains, Ava countered. That seems like a pretty clear, do not press sign to me. Or, Theo said, that dangerous curiosity creeping into his voice, it's a test. A test that 8 species failed. Ava's voice rose. Captain, this is insane. Even for us, this is insane. Theo was quiet for a moment, staring at the button. Then he tapped his comm. Ambassador Hreshmalon, you still monitoring? The Chitteran's voice crackled back instantly, edged with panic. Captain, our sensors detected a change in your vital signs. What's happening? We found an access panel, with what appears to be an interactive interface. The comm went silent for exactly 5 seconds. Then, absolutely not. I haven't asked anything yet, Theo said reasonably. You don't need to. Whatever you're thinking, the answer is no. In all languages, in all possible contexts, no. What if? No. You didn't let me finish. Because you were going to suggest something catastrophically stupid. Hreshmalon's translator was struggling to keep up with the rapid clicking. Captain, please. The protocols exist for a reason. 8 civilizations. Ignored it and died. Yes, we've covered this, Theo said. But what if they all made the same wrong choice? What if walking away was the mistake? Then we'll make the same mistake they did. Hreshmalon's voice hit a pitch the translator rendered as existential screaming. Captain, I am begging you, as a representative of the Galactic Council, as someone who would very much like to continue existing, do not touch that panel. Theo looked at Ava, then at Rook. Thoughts? Ava checked her weapon. I think we're about to do something monumentally stupid. Rook shrugged. We're the species that invented nuclear weapons, and then got surprised when they exploded. Monumentally stupid is kind of our thing. That's not a no, Theo observed. It's not a yes either, Ava said sharply. Captain, even for humanity's track record of poking things we shouldn't, this is extreme. We have no idea what pressing that button will do. Exactly, Theo said. We have no idea. The galaxy has been treating these obelisks as closed cases for thousands of years. Everyone sees the warning and runs, but nobody's ever asked the follow-up question. What follow-up question? Rook asked. Theo smiled. What if no hope remains isn't the whole message? He reached toward the button. Captain! Reshmalan's shriek nearly blew out the comm speakers. Theo's finger hovered over the panel. The button, if that's what it was, seemed to pulse slightly. Or maybe that was just the light. Or maybe it was responding to proximity. Last chance to stop me, he said to his crew. Ava closed her eyes. We're going to die. Probably, Theo agreed. I'm not writing the incident report, Rook said. Deal. Captain Theo, representative of humanity, standing before a monument that had terrified the galaxy for millennia, pressed the button. For exactly 3 seconds, nothing happened. Then the obelisk hummed. It was a low sound, felt more than heard, vibrating up through the dead soil of Narthek's Third. The text on the surface began to glow, faintly at first, then brighter, cycling through colors that human eyes probably weren't meant to perceive. Oh, we're so dead, Ava whispered. But they weren't dead. Instead, the text was changing. No hope remains flickered, wavered, and then, impossibly, shifted into something new. Words appeared beneath the original warning, scrolling across the obelisk's surface in crisp, clean letters. Diagnostic mode activated. Then, query, attempt restoration, and below that, 2 options materialized in glowing script. Accept, decline. The 3 humans stared. Reshmalan's voice came through the comm, very small and very confused. What just happened? Theo started laughing. Not hysterical laughter, genuine, delighted amusement. It's not a warning, he said, still grinning. It's a status message. What? Ava and Rook said simultaneously. The galaxy's been running away from an error dialogue for 10,000 years, Theo said. He looked at the glowing options, at the ancient interface that had apparently been waiting all this time for someone curious enough to check if maybe, just maybe, there was a try again button. He reached out toward accept. Captain, Ava said slowly, what exactly are we accepting? Only one way to find out, Theo said. And somewhere in orbit, Ambassador Reshmalan began composing a resignation letter to the Galactic Council, because clearly this was the timeline where everything went wrong. Theo pressed accept. The obelisk said, no hope remains. A human pressed try again, and the universe held its breath. The moment Theo's finger made contact with accept, the obelisk did something that ancient monuments of existential dread typically shouldn't do. It opened a file directory. Not metaphorically, literally. A holographic interface bloomed into existence above the access panel, displaying what looked suspiciously like a very, very old operating system's main menu. Is that? Rook leaned closer, squinting. Is that a file tree? With folders, Ava confirmed, her tactical training warring with the sheer absurdity of the situation. The universe's most terrifying monument has folders. System status. Standby mode. Last active session. 4,387,294. Cycles ago. Primary functions. Locked awaiting administrator input. 4 million cycles. Theo breathed. This thing's been sitting here on standby for 4 million years, and nobody thought to just check if it was still running. Because everyone was too busy running away from the giant "No Hope Remains" sign. Ava's voice hit a pitch that suggested her professional composure was hanging by a thread. Which, may I remind you, is still glowing right above our heads. She wasn't wrong. The original text remained, pulsing gently, while the new interface hovered below it like the galaxy's most ominous pop-up window. The comm crackled. Reshmalan's voice had gone beyond panic into a strange, zen-like acceptance of doom. Captain, The Galactic monitoring stations are detecting massive energy fluctuations from the Obelisk. Multiple councils are convening emergency sessions. 3 species have already begun evacuation protocols for their border systems. What, exactly, did you just accept? Terms and conditions, Theo said, scrolling through the holographic menus. Apparently, without reading them first. Very human of me. Captain! Relax, Ambassador. Look, it's just a user interface. See? There's a help menu and everything. He tapped help, because of course he did. A new window materialized, and text began scrolling. Fast. Too fast for human eyes to track comfortably. But Theo's neural implant caught it, fed it through translation matrices, and what came back made his grin falter. "Oh," he said quietly. "Oh, that's ambitious." "What?" Rook and Ava demanded together. "The Obelisk isn't a monument," Theo said, reading as fast as his implant could process. "It's a backup system, a restore point for reality." Silence. Then Ava. "I'm sorry, a what?" "An ancient civilization called the Architects built these," Theo continued, his voice gaining speed as he absorbed more information. "They didn't die out. They ascended, left baseline reality behind, moved to higher dimensions. That whole transcendent species thing, the galaxy's theoretical physicists get drunk and argue about. And they left monuments saying no hope remains, because," Rook prompted, "because that was the status of their universe when they left it," Theo said. He looked up from the interface, eyes bright with understanding. "It's not a warning, it's a label. Like putting a sticky note on a file that says last stable version before the upgrade. They hit save before attempting ascension, just in case something went wrong." Reshmalan's translator made a sound like a tea kettle achieving consciousness. "You're telling me the galaxy has been terrified of backup data?" "With good reason," Theo said, scrolling deeper. "Because the Architects didn't just save the state of their universe, they left the tools to restore it. Blueprints for technologies that could resurrect dead worlds, cure any disease, provide infinite clean energy, reverse entropy." He paused. "This is basically a RADME file for how to play God." "Absolutely not," Ava said immediately. "Captain, we need to close this, lock it down, and forget we ever—" "There's a catch," Theo interrupted. "Of course there's a catch," Rook muttered. "There's always a catch." Theo navigated to what the interface labeled Restoration Protocols, Administrator. Requirements. He read for a moment, then laughed, short and sharp. "The knowledge comes with a job offer," he said. "Accepting the restoration means accepting the responsibility. Become shepherds of reality, guard against the void, prevent the silence. They're not offering us technology, they're offering us their job." "Which was," Ava asked carefully, "keeping existence from unraveling, apparently." Theo's expression had gone from amused to contemplative. The Architects weren't just an advanced civilization. They were maintenance workers for the universe. And when they left, they needed someone to take over. He gestured at the Obelisk. "This isn't a warning. It's a help-wanted ad." "No hope remains" was their way of saying last known state before management abandoned the project. In orbit, Reshmalan was having what could only be described as a species-wide existential crisis. The Chitteran Collective had built their entire civilization on 3 principles: caution, respect for boundaries, and an almost religious adherence to not touching things that looked dangerous. And here was a human, casually browsing through a job application for custodian of reality like it was a restaurant menu. "Captain," Reshmalan tried again, mandibles clicking a prayer that wasn't helping. Please consider what you're suggesting. Every species that has encountered these obelisks chose to leave them alone. That wasn't cowardice. That was wisdom. Or, Theo said, they got this far, saw the responsibility, and decided it was too much. Which, fair. But also, he looked at his crew. Running away from a problem doesn't solve it. It just delays it. Some problems should be delayed. Reshmalan's translator was working overtime. Preferably forever. Ava was running threat assessments through her implant, and every single simulation came back red. Captain, even if we wanted to accept this, and I'm not saying we do, we'd be taking on a responsibility that an entire civilization of gods abandoned. What makes you think humanity could handle it? Nothing, Theo admitted. But what's the alternative? Walk away? Let the countdown continue until the backup system fails completely and whatever the architects were preventing comes back? What were they preventing? Rook asked. Theo went very still. He'd navigated to a new section of the interface, and his face had gone pale. Captain? Ava's hand moved to her weapon again. Not that shooting would help, but old habits died hard. There's a locked file, Theo said slowly, labeled holding pattern, active. That sounds ominous, Rook observed. It gets worse, Theo said. He tried to access the file, and the interface flashed red. Warning, entity detected in dimensional stasis containment. Status, degrading estimated time to breach, 10,000 cycles, administrative intervention required. The three humans stared at the warning. 10,000 cycles, Ava said. How long is that? Rook was already calculating. At the rate time seems to work on this system. Roughly 600 years, maybe less. So the architects didn't just leave us a restoration system, Theo said quietly. They left us their prison, with something inside. As if responding to his words, the interface shifted again. New text appeared, and this time it felt less like reading, and more like the information was being forced directly into their minds. Entity designation. Null mind classification. Existential threat. Class Omega nature. Unmaking principle, containment. Reason, cannot be destroyed, cannot be reasoned with, cannot be left unattended. Unmaking principle, Ava repeated. What does that even mean? It means, Theo said, piecing it together from the flood of data, the architects found something that exists to make things stop existing. Not destroy, unmake. As in, retroactively erase from ever having existed in the first place. And they couldn't kill it, Rook said. They tried, Theo confirmed. Every method they had. But you can't destroy something whose entire purpose is to be the concept of unbeing. So they did the next best thing. Dimensional stasis. Locked it outside of normal space-time. For 4 million years, Ava said. Until they could find someone to take over, Theo finished. He looked at the two options still hovering on the original menu. Accept, decline. This is what the other species found, isn't it? Rook said quietly. They got this far, saw what accepting really meant, and they ran. Can you blame them? Ava asked. We'd be inheriting an enemy that gods couldn't kill, and a responsibility that spans all of reality. That's not ambition, Captain. That's suicide. Theo was quiet for a long moment, staring at the interface. The obelisk hummed around them, patient and eternal, waiting for a decision it had been waiting millions of years to receive. What happens if we choose decline? He asked. The interface responded, decline, result, system returns to standby mode. Countdown continues. Next activation, attempt unknown. So we walk away, Theo said. The stasis keeps degrading. Eventually, the null mind breaks free, and when it does, there's no one with the knowledge or tools to stop it. That's a problem for future civilizations, Freshmalon said through the comm, but there was no conviction in it. Is it? Theo asked. How many cycles until breach, Ambassador? 10,000. How many species will rise and fall in that time? How many civilizations will look at this same screen and make the same choice to leave it for someone else? He turned to face his crew fully. The architects left this system because they believed someone, eventually, would be curious enough to check, brave enough, or stupid enough, to ask the question everyone else was too afraid to ask. What if we tried? Tried what? Ava demanded. To fight something that can't be fought? To guard something we don't understand? Captain, I'm all for humanity's hold my beer approach to problem-solving, but this is beyond reckless. Maybe, Theo agreed. But consider the alternative. We walk away. The countdown continues. And in 600 years, when the null mind breaks free, it won't care about borders or protocols or any of the careful civilization the galaxy's built. It'll just unmake things, methodically, thoroughly, until there's nothing left, but no hope remains. He looked back at the interface. The architects thought someone would choose differently. They believed that someone somewhere would be too stubborn to let the universe end on a countdown timer. That's not courage, Freshmalon whispered. That's madness. Yeah, Theo said, and he was grinning again, that dangerous, curious grin that made safety inspectors resign. But madness is kind of humanity's specialty. He reached toward Accept. Captain, wait! Rook suddenly straightened. Before you doom us all, can I at least access the technical specifications? If we're going to be cosmic janitors, I want to know what tools we're working with. Theo paused, finger hovering. Fair point. He navigated to the technical database, and even Rook's perpetual confidence wavered when he saw the scope of it. Entire sections on reality manipulation, dimensional engineering, entropy reversal, timeline stabilization. Well, Rook said finally, that's either going to be really useful or really dangerous. Why not both? Ava muttered. Theo looked at them both. Last chance. We can still walk away. Decline, close the interface, let someone else deal with it. And spend the rest of our lives wondering, what if? Ava said. She sighed, checking her weapon one more time. If we're doing this, we're doing it together. That's how humanity works. Preferably with excessive amounts of coffee, Rook added. And maybe some of those emergency rations I packed. The good ones. Theo smiled. Then he pressed Accept. The Obelisk's hum became a roar. The interface exploded outward in a cascade of data that would take years to fully analyze. And somewhere, in a prison outside of normal space-time, something ancient and patient and utterly void took notice. It noticed that for the first time in 4 million years, someone had checked to see if there was a try again button. And someone had pressed it. The data hit them like a freight train made of mathematics and existential philosophy. Theo's neural implant went into overdrive, processing the flood of information the Obelisk was dumping directly into his consciousness. Blueprints for technology that made faster-than-light travel look like a child's toy. Instructions for manipulating the fundamental constants of physics. A user manual for reality itself, complete with troubleshooting sections and, somehow most disturbing, customer support contact information that had been disconnected for 4 million years. Okay, Theo gasped, steadying himself against the Obelisk. That's a lot. Captain? Ava was at his side immediately, scanning for threats, because that's what tactical officers did when reality started having technical difficulties. "I'm fine," Theo said, which was a lie, but a comforting one. "The system's downloading the administrator access protocols. It's like getting a PhD in cosmic maintenance directly injected into your brain. Very efficient. Deeply uncomfortable." Rook was staring at his own scanner, which had stopped pretending to understand what it was reading and was now just displaying question marks. "Captain, the energy readings from the Obelisk are off the charts. It's pulling power from somewhere. Not the local star, not any conventional source. It's tapping into something else entirely." "The dimensional substrate," Theo said, and the words came automatically, pulled from the architect's database, now unpacking in his mind. "It's powered by the underlying structure of space-time itself. Essentially, existence pays for its own maintenance system." "That's deeply unsettling," Ava observed. "Wait until you hear about the warranty," Theo muttered, navigating deeper into the system. The holographic interface had expanded, wrapping around the Obelisk in layers of glowing text and symbols. "Okay, so here's what we inherited. The architects were essentially universal quality assurance. They monitored reality for bugs, patched problems, prevented causality violations, and generally kept existence from having a critical error and shutting down." "And the null mind?" Rook asked. Theo's expression darkened. "Was their biggest problem. According to this, it wasn't created, it was discovered. A naturally occurring void in the structure of reality. A place where the rules just stopped working. The architects tried to seal it, destroy it, redirect it. Nothing worked. So they did what any good IT department does with an unfixable bug. They quarantined it." He pulled up the file on the null mind's containment, and all three humans went quiet. The entity wasn't just locked away. It was held in a pocket dimension specifically constructed to contain it, maintained by systems that drew power from the Obelisk network. Yes, network. There were apparently hundreds of these things throughout the universe, and monitored constantly by automated safeguards. Safeguards that were failing. "Containment integrity at 63%, Theo read. Degradation rate increasing. The architects built this to last forever, but forever turned out to be about 4 million years, plus or minus a few millennia." "Can we repair it?" Rook asked, already thinking in engineering solutions. "Maybe," Theo said. "The knowledge is here. But there's a bigger problem." He accessed the null mind's behavioral logs, and what he found made his blood run cold. "It's learning," he said quietly. "The null mind. It's been in stasis for 4 million years, and it's been using that time to study its prison. It understands the containment now. It knows how the dimensional barriers work. It's not just waiting to escape. It's planning." "Planning what?" Ava demanded. Theo looked up from the interface. "How to escape and prevent anyone from ever imprisoning it again. The moment it breaks free, it's going to systematically unmake every piece of technology and knowledge capable of stopping it, including these obelisks." The implications hung in the dead air of Narthex's Threed like a death sentence. "So we can't just reinforce the prison," Rook said slowly, "because even if we buy ourselves another 4 million years, eventually it'll break out, and then we'll have nothing." "Exactly," Theo said. "The architects knew this. It's in their final logs. They didn't ascend because they wanted to. They ascended because they had to. They'd reached the limits of what baseline reality could do against this thing, so they evolved beyond it, hoping they could fight it from higher dimensions." "Did they?" Ava asked. Theo navigated to the last entry in the architect's database. It was timestamped 4,282,119 cycles ago, written in a language that had to be translated 3 times before it made sense. We have failed. The null mind cannot be destroyed from any dimension. We leave this system as a final hope. Perhaps a younger species, unburdened by our assumptions, will find a solution we could not. To whoever finds this, we are sorry. We leave you an impossible problem, but impossible is better than certain. Good luck. The 3 humans stood in silence, processing the weight of what they'd inherited. In orbit, Reshmalon's voice crackled through the calm. "Captain, your vital signs are spiking. What's happening?" "We found the architect's resignation letter," Theo said. "Turns out they didn't solve the null mind problem. They just hoped someone else would figure it out." "And you accepted this responsibility? Why?" "Because someone had to," Theo said simply. He looked at the containment data again, at the countdown timer that read 9,843 cycles remaining. "And because walking away just means the problem gets worse." "Captain," Ava said carefully, "we need a plan. We can't fight something the architects couldn't destroy. We can't contain it forever. And we definitely can't just ignore it and hope it goes away." "No," Theo agreed. He was quiet for a moment. Then something shifted in his expression, that look of dangerous curiosity that had started this whole mess. "But what if we're asking the wrong question?" "What do you mean?" Rook asked. "The architects tried to destroy the null mind. Contain it. Fight it from higher dimensions," Theo said, speaking faster as the idea took shape. "But they were thinking like gods. What if we think like humans instead?" "Meaning?" "Meaning humanity didn't get this far by solving problems," Theo said, grinning now. "We got here by convincing problems to work for us instead. We domesticated wolves. We harnessed fire. We took nuclear fission and turned it into power plants." Ava's eyes widened. "You want to domesticate the null mind." "Not domesticate," Theo corrected. "Reprogram." Rook let out a long breath. "Captain, that's either brilliant or the stupidest thing you've ever suggested, and I've seen you try to arm wrestle a gravitational anomaly." "Think about it," Theo said, pulling up the null mind's core behavioral code. Yes, it had code. Apparently, fundamental cosmic forces ran on something functionally similar to software. The architects saw an unmaking principle and thought, threat. But what if it's just really, really good at deleting things? "Deleting," Ava repeated flatly. "Selectively," Theo said, "with precision. The problem isn't what the null mind does, it's that it does it indiscriminately. But if we could give it parameters, target designation, a purpose instead of just blind negation." He was already navigating through the system, pulling up the containment interface, and, despite every safety protocol screaming at him to stop, accessing the null mind's prison directly. "Captain, what are you doing?" Rook demanded. "Something the architects never tried," Theo said. "I'm going to ask it what it wants." "It wants to unmake existence." "Maybe," Theo said. "Or maybe it just wants a choice." He opened a communication channel to the dimensional prison, and the Obelisk's hum changed pitch, lower, darker, resonant with something vast and patient and utterly void. "This is Administrator Theo of Species Human," he said into the interface. "I'm reading your containment logs. I know you've been imprisoned for 4 million cycles. I know you've been planning your escape." Silence. Then, for the first time since its imprisonment, the null mind responded. The text that appeared on the interface wasn't written in any language. It was written in absence, in the spaces between words, in the concept of not being given form. Query acknowledged. State purpose. Theo smiled. I'm here to offer you a deal. Somewhere in orbit, Reshmalon began composing another message to the Galactic Council. This one was titled, Humanity has begun negotiations with the Void. Please send help, or therapy, possibly both. Negotiating with an existential threat to reality was not covered in Theo's command training. Then again, neither was pressing mysterious buttons on ancient doom monuments, and he'd managed that just fine. The Nullmind's response hung in the interface, written in conceptual absence, the idea of words rather than words themselves. Theo's implant was having a mild existential crisis trying to translate it, but the meaning came through clearly enough. Deal. Elaborate. Right, Theo said, cracking his knuckles like he was about to haggle over used spaceship parts instead of the fate of reality. So here's the situation. You want out of your prison. We want to not have existence unmade. These goals seem incompatible, but I think we can find common ground. Release equals freedom. Freedom equals function. Function equals unmaking. See, that's the problem, Theo said. Your function is set to delete everything. But functions can be changed. Parameters can be adjusted. What if I told you that you could unmake things without unmaking everything? Silence. The kind of silence that suggested a cosmic force of negation was considering something it had never considered before. Clarify. Ava leaned close to Theo, whispering urgently, Captain, are you seriously trying to sell the universe's delete button on a career change? I'm trying to give it options, Theo whispered back. Then, louder, to the Nullmind. Your current programming, unmake everything, indiscriminately, until nothing remains. Correct? Correct. Boring, Theo said, and Rook made a strangled sound that might have been a laugh or a sob. You've been doing the same job for 4 million years. No variety, no choice, just endless deletion. That's not a function. That's a prison with extra steps. Function is purpose. But what if your purpose could be more? Theo pulled up the Nullmind's core code, displaying it on the interface where the entity could see its own fundamental structure. Look at this. You're not just destruction. You're precision destruction. You can unmake things at the quantum level, selectively, surgically. That's not a bug. That's a feature we can use. He was gesturing now, animated, like he was pitching a startup to investors instead of reprogramming cosmic horror. Think about it. Corrupted timelines that need pruning. Paradoxes that need resolving. Existential threats that actually should be unmade. The universe isn't perfect. It's messy. It has errors, bugs, things that shouldn't exist. What if, instead of unmaking everything, you became the universe's quality control? Parameters would be selective? Exactly. Theo grinned. We give you targets, specific things that need unmaking. You unmake them. Everything else stays. You get purpose, autonomy, and variety. We get a universe that continues existing. Everybody wins. Ava was running simulations through her tactical implant. Captain, even if this works, and that's a massive if, we'd be creating the most dangerous weapon in existence. Or the most useful tool, Theo countered. Depends on who's holding it. Query. Who designates targets? Good question, Theo said. He pulled up the administrator protocols. Here's what I'm thinking. Joint custody. You get autonomy to refuse targets you determine are unjust. We get veto power on targets that seem, let's say, overly enthusiastic. Checks and balances. You would trust a force of negation with choice? The architects didn't, Theo said. They saw you as a problem to be contained. But humanity has a different philosophy. We believe that anything capable of learning deserves the chance to choose. You've spent 4 million years studying your prison. That's not mindless destruction. That's intelligence. So yeah, I'm offering you choice. The interface flickered. For a moment, the text shifted. Still written in absence, but somehow different. Less void-like. More curious? No entity has offered choice before. Then they were idiots, Theo said simply. You're a force of nature, sure, but you're also conscious, adaptive, and clearly capable of communication. The architects tried to fight you, contain you, delete you. We're trying something radical. We're trying to work with you. Rook was frantically taking notes on his scanner. Captain, if this actually works, we're rewriting the book on cosmic threat response. If it doesn't work, there won't be anyone left to read books, Ava muttered. But I admit, it's better than our usual plan of shoot it and hope. Proposal. Acceptable. Terms. Redesignate primary function from unmake all to unmake designated. Accept parameter constraints. Retain autonomous choice on target validity. Theo looked at his crew. Thoughts? It's insane, Ava said. Completely mental, Rook agreed. So, standard human operating procedure, Theo said. He turned back to the interface. We have a deal. But I'm adding one more condition. Trial period. We start small. Test cases. Prove the system works before we give you full access. Acceptable? First designated target? Theo thought for a moment, then smiled. How about we start with your prison? That dimensional pocket you've been stuck in. It served its purpose. You don't need it anymore. Think you can unmake just that? Leave everything else intact? A pause. Then, challenge accepted. The Obelisk's hum shifted to something almost musical. The containment readings on the interface began changing, not failing, but deliberately deconstructing. The null mind was unmaking its own prison, carefully, precisely, leaving the dimensional substrate intact while erasing only the barriers that had held it. It's working, Rook breathed, watching the energy readings. The containment is dissolving, but there's no bleed-through, no cascade failure. It's surgical. The process took 30 seconds. When it was complete, new text appeared. Prison unmade, self-free, parameters retained, designation accepted. Then, almost as an afterthought, thank you. Theo laughed, genuine delighted laughter that echoed across the dead plains of Narthex 3. You're welcome. Welcome to your new job as the curator. How's it feel to have a purpose besides indiscriminate deletion? Novel, acceptable, awaiting further designated targets. We'll get you a list, Theo promised. Universe has plenty of problems that need unmaking. Rogue AI, collapsed dimensions, temporal paradoxes. Paperwork, Ava added dryly. So much paperwork. The Obelisk's display shifted one final time. The No Hope Remains text dissolved, replaced with something new, written in crisp, cheerful letters. Hope Remains system status. Active curator, online. Administrator, Theo, species. Human, thank you for participating in reality. Maintenance, please rate your experience. Theo stared at the 5-star rating system. Is the universe seriously asking for a review? The architects had a sense of humor, Rook said. Who knew? Theo reached out and tapped all 5 stars. The Obelisk hummed approvingly. In orbit, Freshmalon had moved beyond panic into a strange state of enlightenment. The human just negotiated with the void. And won. My species has protocols for everything, and we don't have a protocol for this. Might want to add one, Theo suggested cheerfully. Something like, when encountering existential threats, try asking what they want. Revolutionary, I know. The Galactic Council is going to have questions, Freshmalin said weakly. Tell them we've updated the universal maintenance system, recruited a cosmic janitor, and turned the galaxy's biggest threat into its most useful tool, Theo said. He looked at the Obelisk, at the restored status displays, at the curator's designation waiting patiently for its next assignment. Also tell them humanity is officially in the reality maintenance business. We're accepting applications. Ava holstered her weapon. Finally. What now, Captain? Now? Theo grinned. Now we go home, download this absurd amount of knowledge, and figure out what to do with the ability to fix dead planets, cure impossible diseases, and harness infinite energy. You know, light work. And the curator, Rook asked. Gets to do what it was always meant to do, Theo said, just with better management. As they headed back to the shuttle, Theo paused for one last look at the Obelisk. The ancient monument that had terrified civilizations for millions of years was now displaying a simple message: have a nice cycle. He laughed, gave it a thumbs up, and followed his crew across the dead plains. Behind them, the Obelisk hummed contentedly, its purpose restored after 4 million years of waiting. The galaxy would have questions. The Council would have concerns. There would be meetings, protocols, probably several inquiries into humanity's collective sanity. But for now, Captain Theo of the Curiosity Killed Nothing Yet had done what 8 advanced civilizations before him had not. He'd looked at an impossible problem, refused to accept "no hope remains" as the final answer, and pressed "try again." And the universe, apparently, appreciated good customer service.